17 million people are under threat of severe weather as a powerful storm system threatens Florida and the entire East Coast. Elisa Raffa is in the CNN Weather Center tracking the storm. Elisa, tell us what it's doing now and where's it going?
We've got some heavy rain on tap for today in Florida, and it's headed up the entire East Coast. We're talking from Florida and Maine with impacts of heavy rain and some gusty winds. A flood watch in effect as we go into Sunday for most of the Florida peninsula here. You can see some of that rain starting to move in, some showers from Tampa to Orlando. Notice that lightning in the corner there. That's where that storm is continuing to deepen and strengthen as it moves onshore. So we are looking at a threat of some damaging wind gusts, 60 miles per hour or greater, and a few tornadoes possible in all of this yellow there across the Florida Peninsula. You can see the intense rain spreading inland as we go through the day today. Then it races north going into Sunday. The Carolinas on tap next for some of that heavy rain. And then it continues. It's trekking to Maine as we go into Monday with some heavy rain and gusty winds. Wind alerts already out in effect for that. So you can see the multi-day flooding threat, that yellow showing some intense rain up to 6 inches possible across parts of Florida. Looking at some totals up to 4 inches really going up into Maine. So intense rain at that. You can see some of those oranges there really showing some of those hefty rain totals, and it takes that footprint all the way up to the Canadian border, Fred.
Wow, that's pretty extensive. Elisa Raffa, thanks so much. That major storm moving into Florida is now threatening 17 million people along the East Coast. Governor Ron DeSantis is activating the Florida Guard in anticipation of damaging winds and flash flooding. Rafael Romo is in Daytona Beach. Elisa Raffa is in the CNN Weather Center. Let's go to you first, Rafael. What's happening?
Yeah, hi, Fred. The rain is now steady here, although still very, very light. The winds have picked up quite a bit in the last couple of hours, and as you can see behind me, the water, the ocean, is getting choppier by the minute. But we've seen quite a few people still out here. A couple just walked by us. They were enjoying the scenery here. And believe it or not, Fred, there was a gentleman who just went into the water just a moment ago. A surfer. He is going to surf today. It's still not too cold here, but again, the winds are picking up. And yes, as you said before, officials are doing everything they can to make sure that people are safe. You mentioned about the governor activating the state guard. He's also asked the emergency management division here in the state of Florida to prepare equipment in case they need to respond to flooding, in case they need to respond to tornadoes, any damage that may happen. And then there's also a county just north of here, Flagler, that throughout the year they installed 11 miles of dunes that's meant to protect from erosion and from flooding. And so you can bet your bottom dollar that officials are going to be keeping a close, monitoring close those dunes to see if they do their job. Also, just north of Miami in Hollywood Beach, authorities have installed barriers. They are tiger dams. They're known as tiger bands. These are reusable tubes that serve as barriers so that in a situation like this, a storm that we're going to have later today, they can stop the water from going into those communities. But again, not too bad here for the moment. We've seen not only those people, but take a look on the other side of me, Fred. Just a moment ago, we saw some people go on the slingshot and also the hammer.
Oh, no.
Which means that operators still feel comfortable that they can operate those attractions, and it's safe enough for people to do so. I'm sure in the next few hours that's going to change dramatically, but for the time being, people are enjoying themselves here. Fred, back to you.
All right, that's good. So that means the winds are not too bad right now, and that's why they feel like it's safe. Elisa Raffa, how concerned should people be?
The winds will continue to pick up through the day today, and that rain could come down pretty heavy at times. We have some coastal advisories and warnings in effect, too, for what Rafael was mentioning, a lot of the ocean impacts. You know, the storm will kind of just slosh the ocean inland, and then you've got the flood watch as well for up to 6 inches of rain possible. Right now, some showers working their way in. You've got a heavier band in the Big Bend of Florida there, and the severe risk could also pick up going into tonight as well. We have that level 2 out of 5 threat for damaging wind gusts and a few tornadoes. As this thing has so much moisture and it kind of swirls on shore, you can see the pockets of heavy rain from Tampa to Jacksonville later on tonight. And then the heavy rain works its way up the East Coast tomorrow. A flood threat from the Carolinas and then up to Maine as we go into Monday with wind and heavy rain. So a multi-day flood threat here. Again, you've got that level 2 out of 4 of that flooding from Sunday and into Monday from the Carolinas up into Maine. And on top of this, we're packing some wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour along the coast from the Carolinas to Maine. You already have warnings in effect there, so you could have some power outages here and there from that wind too, Fred.
All right, Elisa Raffa, thank you so much.
Tonight, millions of Americans from South Florida to the Northeast are bracing for another weekend storm. The system is now closing in on Florida, where it's expected to bring heavy rains and powerful gusts of wind before barreling up the East Coast. Elisa Raffa is in the CNN Weather Center tracking the storm for us. Elisa, this looks like a soaker for so many people up and down the East Coast over the next couple of days. It's just going to be nasty.
We're talking a footprint border to border, really up to the Canadian border, where we'll find even some significant rain there. I mean, you could see the radar is filling in here with some of that rain, starting to turn a little bit heavier in pockets. And you see where you've got some of that lightning. That's the center of the storm continuing to develop and strengthen as it works its way up the East Coast. Flood watches in effect through tomorrow morning for parts of Florida. And look at where they've been extended. 60 million people across 17 states with some flood watches, including D.C. up into New York, Boston there, and Maine. The severe threat for the overnight here in Florida, you see that yellow where we could still find some damaging wind gusts and a few tornadoes, and then it extends up into the Carolinas going into tomorrow from Charleston to Wilmington, that yellow area as well, as where a couple of tornadoes are also possible going to tomorrow afternoon. And you can see where we get some of this heavy rain to really flourish on the overnight here across the Florida peninsula. And then tomorrow it's the Carolinas. The Panthers have a game in Charlotte tomorrow. It's going to look pretty nasty. Some of that heavy rain and the gusty winds, and then that storm system continues to work its way up the East Coast, taking with it heavy rain, some gusty winds, and as it works its way up towards Maine. Notice not a lot of snow. This typical track might give you some of those big blockbuster snows, but the air is just not cold enough. You've got some of the rain footprint again, widespread, 2 to 4 inches all the way up the East Coast, headed even up into upstate New York and Maine. And the winds with this will really pack a punch. It will start to strengthen even more, where we're looking at some 30-40 mile per hour gusts across the Carolinas, and then off the coast of Long Island, Cape Cod, going into Maine, looking at some 60 mile per hour gusts there. So take in and tie down those Christmas decorations.
All right, that's good advice. I hope they don't get messed up. All right, Elisa Raffa, thank you very much. Take cover, everybody. It's going to be a lot of rain coming down. If you're